Welcome to the House of Truth. Today we're continuing our series about the patriarchs, and we're going to resume where we left off last week. Last week we talked about the sons of Isaac, Esau, Esau and Jacob, and how God had made His will known from the beginning. He just wasn't telling what was going to happen come about. He's also telling us, making His will known. We showed that plainly from Scripture. That Jacob, the elder was going to serve the younger. And now Isaac favored Esau. I'm sorry, favored Esau because of the food, and how Rebecca favored Jacob because he hung out the tents and helped, and he's pretty much a mama's boy. And we saw how that. Isaac had plotted, even though he knew the will of God, and had generally been a faithful man, still favored Esau and wanted to give him the birthright. And Esau went along with this, contrary to the will of God. We saw Rebecca and Jacob, who there's no mention of them praying to God, making any kind of inquiry, took matters in their own hands instead of trusting God and inquiring to Him and seeing what He wanted to do about it. Perhaps He would have showed up to Jacob and told him, Isaac, and said, "Nah, nothing doing," or whatever. But they didn't do that. And as I mentioned before, paybacks are terrible because Jacob ends up deceiving his father. His father can't see, and he goes around deceiving with the skin of a goat, and gives him food and drink, perhaps impairing his judgment some more, and deceives him, and this creates animosity. The truth is, Esau felt like God that Jacob had taken his birthright, but if they were obeying God, it was Jacob's to begin with, and Isaac was trying to give it to the wrong son. So the paybacks begin today, and we're gonna look at those because they're not just they're going to occur over many years. You'll see over many lessons. But paybacks are terrible, and they begin today when we look at the wives of Jacob. Now, we begin in Genesis 27. Picking up right the verse, that's where we left off last time, verse 41 through 46. And Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing where his father had blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, "The days of the mourning of my father at hand, then I'll slay my brother Jacob." And these words of Esau, her elder son, were told to Rebekah, and she sent and called Jacob, her younger son, and said unto him, "Behold, your brother Esau is touching you, does comfort himself, purposing to kill you. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice, arise, flee to Laban, my brother in Haran, and tarry with him a few days till your brother's fury turns away, until your brother's anger turn away from you, and he forget that which you've done to him. Then I'll send him fetch you from there. Why should I be deprived also of you both in one day?" And Rebekah said to Isaac, "I am worried of my life because of the daughters of Heth. Take Jacob a wife of the daughters of. If Jacob take a wife of the daughters of Heth, then such as are the daughters of the land. What good shall my life do me?" Okay, so there's a little bit in here. We'll try to go over it, but notice. But first, I want you to notice is Esau perhaps was caught on that his mother was behind it. He has no concern about her feelings at all, but he is concerned about his father. He is very much a daddy's boy, so he's gonna wait. Remember, Isaac. I'll prove this later, but Isaac's 137 years of age. Age has been whittling down. His father died only 175, and his great, his like 5 times great grandfather Abraham died 4 years after him. So the ages have been whittling down quite a bit, and Isaac's got his eyesight's left him, except, and he just thinks it's his time. He feels like he's about to his time on this earth's about over. So Jacob, but Esau didn't want to upset his father, dishonor him or anything. So his plans wait for that, but he has no concern about his mother's feelings at all here. But it's not just because he's his daddy's boy, but also he probably discerns, he's probably figured out that his mom was behind the whole plot. So there's a wedge driven between them. Now his mom is coming up with another plot. And that's the way it is often when you don't get God involved and disobey God. You come up with a plot, and then you got to come up with another plot to fix the plot, and it just goes on and on. So her plot is to get Jacob far away from him, and by sending him to her brother. And notice her thought, what she expects from this. A few days. I mean, notice he's not in Mesopotamia where Nahor had built a city, but in Haran, his brother, Haran, his brother built, which is just over the Euphrates River, just outside the greater promised land promised to Abraham and his descendants. So just outside the area they've been called to, and about 2 month journey. So in her mind, she's thinking, well, like she was mail ordered by Isaac. He's going to be gone maybe 4 months, but we'll see. It turns out to be a lot longer than that. And his brothers is never going to exactly forget what he did to him. I mean, come on. When he was hungry, his brother didn't feed him. Instead, the man had sell him his birthright, which he didn't think was valuable, but still now he's thinking it's valuable because dad's gotten a lot richer. And then he tricked his father into blessing him instead of Esau. So Esau's not really ever going to forget all that. It's not, but his anger could cool down. But she's hoping they'll be cooled down in like 4 months' time. But it's not. Now she's concerned. Now I say, why deprive you both in one day? Because remember, remember Noah, from the time of the ark, Noah said, if man sheds man, if man kills a man, by man, his blood must be shed. If Esau kills Jacob, then Jacob's going to be executed under this law. I mean, Esau's going to be executed. And she's going to lose both of them. But the truth is, she really did lose both of them in one day in many ways. As we will see, she actually is never going to see Jacob again. She just is not aware of this. Like I said, paybacks are terrible. Jacob and Esau, as we've already demonstrated, she's already lost him in a very serial sense. He may physically be there, but she's destroyed that relationship she had with her son. No, it's her older son. But now he doesn't. He has no concern for her feelings or anything at all anymore. He's not just he's not just angry at Esau as brother. He's angry at his mother as well. Now, this thing she says is true about the daughters of Heth, and notice that there was no problem with Esau. Remember, Esau didn't get married at his 40, just like his father, but we'd read he was a fornicator, so perhaps. But Jacob, I mean, what's the deal with here with Jacob? I'll show later that he's 67, he's 77 years old. He's not mentioned as a fornicator. He's had no interest in a wife at all because he's just like his father Isaac. Until Sarah died, Isaac had didn't have room in his life for any other woman but his mama. And this is the same way with Jacob here. He's 77 years old, and that showed absolutely zero interest in getting married. And notice what she says to Isaac: "What good will my life do me?" Men generally feel an obligation to try to make their wives happy, and he doesn't want that. But there's a little bit more to it, and also We're gonna see Isaac's gonna feel. We'll look at Isaac's response here in a minute. We'll see a little bit more. But notice this appeal to Isaac that you know if mom ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. So she's putting pressure on Isaac there to feel like he's got to get Jacob a wife from from somewhere else besides where he's at. Can't and he's got to do it quickly. So we continue on. So now we go to Genesis 28 and we go to verses 1 through 5, and we start looking at his response to her plea here. And Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and charged him and said to him, "You shall not take a wife of the daughters of the Canaan. Go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and take you a wife from there of the daughters of Laban, your father's mother. And God Almighty bless you, and make you fruitful, and multiply you, that you may be the multitude of people, and give you the blessing of Abraham to thee, to your seed with you, that you may inherit the land where you are a stranger, which God gave unto Abraham." And Isaac sent away Jacob, and he dwelt in Padan Aram under Laban. He went to Padan Aram under Laban, son of Bethuel, the Assyrian, the brother of Rebekah, Jacob's and Esau's mother. Okay, first again, Padan Aram is kind of a compound word, but there's another area called Padan, and it's not a city; it's a region, or perhaps like a city, like a state of a city state, and it's the one near Armenia, hence the Aram. Aram's where Armenia today and Syria were in that area. So it's up that area there, just across the Euphrates River. That's the area. Haran is the city. Just to clarify that. Remember, Bethel means the house joined to God. So these are worshipers of God over there in Laban, and so he wants to go. He's charging to go there, and he's very specific. What of the daughters of Laban? He's saying you got to marry one of your cousins. So very specific there. And notice now Isaac has conceded, because why he's not going to take his daughters to Canaan. It's not just because of his wife. He wants to make mama happy so that everyone else happy, but also because he knows he shouldn't have been trying to give the blessing to Jacob to begin with. To Esau to begin with, and he could not marry one of the daughters of Canaan because the Messiah, the seed of Abraham, was going to come through him, and he's acknowledging that the seed of Abraham is going to come through Jacob, and that Jacob is indeed that blessing, that God's going to give the blessing of Abraham to him, that he's going to inherit the land they gave to Jacob, they gave to Abraham. So he's finally acknowledging his wrong here. Isaac is, and trying to circumvent the will of God. And he's finally submitting to the will of God. And he's sending, and that requires, again, for him not to marry an idol worshiper. That's to say, Jacob. Esau, he had no problem with him marrying one, because he always knew in the back that that Esau was not the one God had wanted to give these things to. So he just allowed that. Now, this presents a problem for Esau, as we're going to look at here in Genesis 28, verses 6 through 9. And when Esau saw that Isaac blessed Jacob and sent him away to Padan Aram to take him a wife from there, and that as he blessed him, he gave him a charge, saying, "You shall not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan." And that Jacob obeyed his father and his mother and was gone to Padan Haran. Esau, seeing the daughters of Canaan, pleased not Isaac his father. He went to unto Ishmael, took unto the wives which he had, Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son, the sister of Nebajoth, to be his wife. Nebajoth. Okay, so he sees that. Notice it does not please his father. Jacob obeys his father and his mother. Esau again has no concern for his mother at all at this time. In some way, she's dead to him. As I said, paybacks are terrible, and in many ways she's lost Esau, and she's lost Jacob because he's going to be gone a lot longer than she planned. So why is he? So he goes to Ishmael. Now Ishmael, remember, his mother was an Egyptian, and his mother gave him an Egyptian woman to marry. So now this Esau, whose descendants occupy what southern Jordan today and still do, they got that tie to Egypt. So remember what's more modern Jordan today is primarily from the children of Lot, Ammon and Moab, and the children of Esau. And indeed, the first country, and they're tied, they're genetically, and there's a tie to all these to Israel. And the first countries in modern times to make treaties with Israel, peace treaties, and even become allies to an extent, was Egypt and Jordan. Once again, so you see that how that ties into. So I get particularly with Egypt with southern Jordan. So he's not going to do this. He's not going to be aligned with the Canaanites, the Canaanites but those daughters of Het, remember, Het means terror, terrorists. There's still some of that component, and indeed the Jordanians, some of them identify themselves as Palestinians, even though they're not really descended to Palestinians because they're Philistines over in the Gaza Strip. And because they got that identity, many of them, because some of them came from those wives of the Hittites. Okay, so there's a little bit so that plays out a little bit in history today, and prophetically in the future as well. So something worth noting here. So we're the alliance between him and Ishmael, and of course Ishmael's who the Arabs came from. And of course, obviously, through perhaps primarily through the religion of Islam, very tied to the Arabs as well. Now we continue on in Genesis 28, verses 10 through 12, and we're going to look at Jacob because he's went on his journey to obey his parents, and let's just see what goes on here. And Jacob went to see how it goes for him. Jacob went out from Beersheba and went towards Haran. And he lied on a certain place and tarried there all night because the sun was set. And he took the stones of that place and put them for his pillows and lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set upon the earth, and the top of it reached heaven. Behold, the angels of God ascending and descending on it. Okay, so he's taking some rocks and he's putting them from pillows, stones, smooth, rocks are usually, you see the term rock, that's usually kind of the idea of them were jagged and whatever. So, and he's kind of made himself a pillow there to prop his head up, and perhaps they got a little give between them. It's, they're multiple stones, but anyways, he's got to lay down, make himself as comfortable as he can. So, this guy didn't flee with a sleeping bag or anything, apparently. I mean, it tells something about the time of year too. It's, it's obviously in that warm part of the year that's dry, where you don't have to, in Israel, where it just didn't rain at all for like 4 months or for about 4 months, it doesn't rain at all in Israel. And he's there in that period there. He starts having this dream, and this ladder could also be translated staircase or stairway, like like a spiral circuit. But there's angels going up and down on it. Okay, so they're coming down to the earth and going out from there to wherever they go, and when they get back, they're going back up to heaven through this place. And this is why he dreams, but there's more to the dream than that, and that's what we're going to continue on in Genesis. We continue in Genesis 28, verse 13 through 17. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham, your father, the God of Isaac. The land whereon you lie, to you I will give it to your seed. And your seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west, to the east, to the north, to the south. And in you and your seed shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Behold, I am with you, and I'll keep you in all places whither you go, and will bring you again into this land. For I will not leave you till I have done that which I have spoken to you of. And Jacob woke up of sleep and said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I knew it not. And he was afraid and said, how dreadful is this place? This is none but the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. Okay, so first of all, God confirms to him what Isaac heard. He heard it from his father, but now he's hearing it from God himself. Okay. The land where he lays at, well, he's still in the promised land. He's still in the land of Canaan here. Now become a little more apparent as we go along. And notice, he's going to spread to northeast, south, and west. He's going to occupy all the land of Canaan. And, occupy all the land of Canaan. And indeed, all the way given to him to Euphrates rivers and those borders we talked about. We talked about in the future. We talked about the restoration of Israel a while back during the time of the Feast of Tabernacles. So he's promised to give him all that. But notice again, Abraham, he talked about 3 parts of a seed: stars of heaven, sands of the seashore. Notice here, dust of the earth. And then the seed that all is going to be blessed through, that's Messiah. Notice here, he only talks about the other two, the dust of the earth, the earthly seed here, because not every believer is going to live in the land of Israel. They're going to be King of Kings. Messiah is going to be King of Kings, and some are going to be kings of other nations. It's a lot bigger. The earth's a lot bigger than the South Dakota-sized piece of the Middle East. Roughly the size Israel will be in the future. Okay, and they're going to be ruling under him. But the ones who are born the sons of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or the ones who join themselves by being circumcised and taking all the customs, they're going to be in the land. And they're going to be counted as part of that dust of the earth, that natural seed. And the natural seed, the natural people are going to live during that time too under Messiah, who are given in marriage, unlike the believers who've been resurrected bodies. We are not married or given in marriage. So, but there's obviously some natural people because they're going to repopulate the land. We've seen that before. So this is about the natural seed, and of course, Messiah. That seed, Messiah, that all the nations of the earth can be blessed. Remember, Yahab kind of has a double meaning, and one of them is literally it's hill, God, Lord, Yah, heal. Messiah, remember that hill. That hill is going to crush. That's going to be struck in the heel by the serpent. And that hill is going to crush the head of the serpent. Okay, so he's clarifying that this is you, and we need to keep that in mind. It's not anyone else. It is the people of Israel today, and the rest of the Jewish people are still scattered. So about the natural seed there. So now notice this. And this is a picture of the people of Israel as well. Notice he's in the land, but he's being ejected out. Why? Because of disobedience. Because he didn't trust God, and him and his mom plotted, and his father wasn't obeying God and putting him there in the first place. I mean, him and Esau should have just been raised in the beginning, but they weren't. And disobedience is causing him to be ejected from the land. But God's going to preserve him, and then he's going to bring him back in the land. And he's not going to leave him. He's going to keep preserving him till he's done the thing he's spoken of bringing him back in the land and giving it to his descendants and them occupying all of it. Well, the same thing's true about their descendants. The descendants of Israel, the only reason the Torah gives for them to ever be ejected out of the land is disobedience to God. And I mean, willful disobedience after warning after warning, after warning after warning, a plague and judgment after judgment come upon them, and just stubbornly getting harder and harder. It happened with them in the northern kingdom of the Assyrians, happened in the southern kingdom of the Babylonians. Then after they were brought back in the line time of Nehemiah, it happened again with the Roman, and that dispersion was far greater than the one of the Babylonians. Further in distance, further in time. And what they do, they reject it. Majority, obviously. We're talking about as a nation, not every individual in the nation. Rejected that one that God said, I'll raise up a prophet like unto Moses, and him you must obey. And if you don't, I'm required of you. Well, he's required it of them. But God has not abandoned them. He's not going to leave them. He's kept them in the places they go. He's provided a little sanctuary for them. And that little sanctuary was often believers helping them, like in the Holocaust. Those that don't realize 6 million Christians died in the Holocaust for helping Jews escape. By the way, 6 million Jews who were in Europe escaped the Holocaust. 6 million died, 6 million escaped. And those Christians literally traded their lives for the Jewish people, for the lives of those Jewish people. They were that little sanctuary God promised. And, remember, like the hiding place and stuff. Okay. So God has preserved them, as he said. And he's going to bring them back into the land, just as he says here to Jacob. And he's going to do everything he spoke of them, just like he says to Jacob. Now, Jacob realized this is no ordinary place. He says, the house of God, the gate of heaven. Why? The angels are coming down. This is where they're coming down onto the earth. And sometimes people talk about a portal or whatever. Well, there's no other place that's given like that really in Scripture except this place here. Now, it doesn't mean there's not others, but the only one we know of certainly is this place here. That's exactly what it is. The gate of heaven opens up. They come down the stairwell, this ladder, whatever, and then they go from there to wherever, taking care of their business and return back to heaven the same, in the same route. Come back here and go up the ladder to this gate. Now, we're going to continue on with Jacob's response to this dream now in Genesis 28, verses 18 through 22. And Jacob rose up early in the morning and took the stone he had put for his pillows and set up for a pillar and poured oil on the top of it. And he called the name of that place Bethel. But the name of that city was called Luz at first. And Jacob bowed a vow, saying, if God be with me and keep me in the way that I go, and give me bread to eat and raiment to put on, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then shall the Lord be my God. And this stone which I have set for a pillar shall be God's house. And all that you give me, I will surely give the tenth unto you. Okay, so first of all, notice it was called Luz originally. At first, it's the Canaanites called it. He renamed it Bethel, the house of God. So Bethel means Bet, house, El, God, short for Elohim. Well, that's plural. Mighty ones. So Eloah, mighty. So he's there, and or mighty one. So notice he takes these stones and makes a pillar and pours oil on top. Well, that tells us some things, right? First of all, he's going to escape, and his father gave him the blessing to go and told him to go. It's not necessarily he went. Yes, he's trying to get away from his brother, but his brother's not going to pursue him anyways because his father he's worried about. He doesn't want to do anything until his father's dead. So he's not going to pursue him and hunt him down out there. And his father know about it. So his father probably gave him something to ride. I mean, remember, he got exceedingly rich, and perhaps gave him something to ride. Definitely gave him some provisions because he got oil from somewhere. Okay, and we don't know if he gave Jacob money, and Jacob bought things as he went along, ran, or if Jacob or Jacob was carrying all this stuff, and he's carrying all this stuff. He needed probably some animal to carry it. Remember, it's a 2-month trip. And as far as him, so it's very reasonable. He had some sort of animal. So maybe he just doesn't make it all the way for whatever reason. But regardless, he has some stuff. Okay, he had oil with him, and also some other provisions. But he knows things are running low, and he just can't keep this. It's not going to last him. So notice this. So he makes this deal with God. That's what he's doing here. He's vowing a vow. God's already told him to be with him. Now he's making a deal with him. If you'll keep me if you'll be with me and keep me, and feed me and clothe me, and bring me back like God already promised, then you're going to be my God. And we're going to call it that pillar, the house of God, and he's going to pay tithes. Now God said nothing about requiring him to pay tithes. Where we learned that Abraham paid tithes to Melchizedek. Second time we see tithes being paid, and we see tithes being paid. Again, that paying tithes is not, the law included it, but it didn't originate in the law. Just like if someone kills someone that by man's blood, they must be shed. Didn't originate the law, originate with Moses. With Noah. I'm sorry, not Moses. Tithing is an act of faith. Tithing is an act of showing that God, recognizing God gave you everything you have. Tithing is an act of trust. If you don't trust in your money, you don't trust him at all. Tithing also is an act of joining to God in promoting his kingdom, doing your part, being that friend of God, like we talked about with Abraham. But putting the kingdom of God first with your money. And that's what Jacob is vowing to do. And it's what all of us who are believers should be doing. Even though it's only commanded in the law, and even though Yeshua called it a lesser commandment. I mean, you're not Torah observant, first of all, if you're not paying tithes. But even if you don't claim to be Torah observant, and so you don't have to keep the lesser commandments to be saved. There's no doubt about that. Yeshua himself said that. But if you trust God and want to promote his kingdom, you're going to trust him with your money, and you're going to use your money for his purpose. Actually, it's the money he gave you for his purposes. That's why he gave it to you in the first place, to bring about, to establish his kingdom on this earth. Okay, now we're going to continue on in Genesis 29. We're going to look in verses 1 through 5. And Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the people of the east. He looked, and behold, a well in the field, and lo, there were 3 flocks of sheep lying by it. For out of that well they watered the flocks, and a great stone was upon the well's mouth. And from there were all the flocks there were all the flocks gathered, and they rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the sheep, and put the stone again at the well's mouth in its place. And Jacob said to them, my brethren, from where are you? And they said, of Haran are we. He said to them, do you know Jacob? Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor? And they said, we know him. Okay, so first of all, the east, remember, east is all reference to the promised land. And by the way, Bethel is about halfway between where he started in Beersheba and where he's heading in Haran. Okay, Haran. So now he's made the other half of this journey. And east means relative to that, especially Jerusalem. So it's not talking about the far east over in China or something. Okay, really, remember, this is just over the Euphrates River. Just on the east bank of the Euphrates River, that area is where we're talking about here, okay? Not far from the east bank of the Euphrates River, kind of kind of near the mountains. So there's 3 flocks of sheep. Oh, I'll get back to that. Notice, I want to explain this about this stone business. You had a big round stone, and some of the wells, sometimes they would even have like little pictures, and an animal would go around kind of a wheel and draw those pictures up in a circle. Anyways, and sometimes it was an artesian well, like we talked about a springing well, and they put a wall around it and put a stone. And then either way, what they would do is they would roll that stone, this great stone. Notice it's great. It's big. It's great. It's huge. And they would roll that stone away from away and let the water flow. And they often would like carve a trough, or sometimes make a wooden trough, depending on the circumstances. But if there's rock there, they might carve a trough and let animals drink. And the well owner would have to make his living off this. He would charge by the minute the water was flowing. When they rolled the stone back, the water would end. Whatever's in the trough would be gone. And this has been done, and it's been done this way in the Middle East up to modern times. Perhaps still in places where they perhaps don't have modern plumbing. They actually, again, you pay by the minute. So so if you got a lot of livestock, it's going to take longer than others or whatever, but you're paying by the minute the water's flowing out. And that's what these guys are doing. They're gathered there waiting for the water to come out. But this here's a picture of Messiah. Notice the sheep are going to be watered, okay? Are going to be watered by this well. And what does that have to be watered? The stone has to be rolled away. Remember, Messiah said, I am the water of life. And these 3 flocks could be thought of in several ways. But perhaps one is before the patriarchs, all those believers, the people of Israel during that time, and the believers that came after it. 3 different flocks that Messiah said he would make into one flock. Okay, we're really talking about Jew and Gentile being made into one flock. Other sheep I have. So again, he used that reference. Other sheep. So these 3 flocks. Messiah is that well, that river. And what's and that great stone? Remember, he was raised for our justification. The stone was rolled away when he was raised. He's the source of life for all the sheep. And another way to look at this could be the sheep that came before him, the sheep that came during his lifetime and after him, up to his return, and the sheep Israel, national Israel, and indeed the whole world eventually, when Israel fulfills its role as the world as world menders. Okay, the chosen people start doing will begin doing what they're chosen to do. Tikkun olam, mending the world through bringing the message of spreading Messiah's rule over the whole earth. In all cases, Messiah is the source of life for those who looked forward to him before he came and believed in the coming Messiah and made sacrifices. To those of us who look back and believe they rose from the dead, and to those in the future, when he returns, it's going to be like life from the dead for the whole world. So that's what this well is about. It's there is a well there, but there is also an allegorical thing here. And it's about Messiah. So now he's going to Laban, and he's found people that know him, but he hadn't met Laban yet. He continues on in Genesis 26 verses 29 verses 6 through 10. And we read the following. And he said to them, "Is he well?" And they said, "He is well." And behold, Rachel or Rachel, it's really Rachel's the right way to pronounce. We might go. I might say Rachel sometimes though. Rachel, his daughter, comes. He comes with the sheep, and he said, "Behold, it is high day. Neither is the time the cows should be gathered together. Why are the sheep? Why are you the sheep? And go and feed them." And they said, "We cannot till the flocks be gathered together, until they roll the stone from the well's mouth. Then we wire the sheep." He spake to them, and while he spake to them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she kept them. And it came to pass that Jacob saw Rachel's daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and wired the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Okay, now there's a number of things worth noting here. First of all, I want you to notice Rachel is coming with the sheep. She's keeping the sheep. I've mentioned this before, but this is perhaps the first example. It's something Jewish people have done for a long time, and everyone else would be wise to do the same thing. Who generally keeps the sheep? Her father. Notice, father has raised her to take care of the sheep as well. He didn't just say, you stick to women's work, stay in the camp, learn from your mother and do that. The daughters were taught as well, because you don't never know where life will go. Perhaps Laban could end up, his sons could end up dying, but it wouldn't do her no good. It would be terrible if she had the sheep to know how to take care of them. The sheep may die or be stolen or whatever, and she wouldn't be able to make a living. So again, the mother kind of took care of the children. They're about 12. There's a trade-off. They just marry them off like at 12 or 13 or anything like that. That was a practice of the heathen, those who do not know God. As soon as puberty hits, get them out of the house. Okay, the girls. Again, the Bible makes plain over and over again. God considers them people to be adults. They're 20, and that's what the godly do. So she's out there, perhaps around 20, and she's taking care, and she's around that age here. We'll see this, and she's taking care of the sheep. And now, but now there's no one there to water them. And notice what Jacob says. He says, it's high time. I mean, he says it's high time. It's not high day, meaning it's like noontime. And the sheep, the cattle, remember we see the word cattle in King James often just means livestock. It can mean sheep, can also can actually mean cows, but also mean sheep, can include sheep, goats, other kinds of livestock. Generally something that you eat or that kind of thing. And they're normally gathered in the evening, but these guys are out at noon, and he wants them to just get done so she can water her sheep. But they don't own the well, and they're waiting for it to be. They don't even got all their sheep, all their flocks gathered together. Notice, they don't got all three of them not been gathered in the one. It's not time for them to drink the well yet. But it's time for him for his people to drink the well at this time, not for everyone else. And notice, remember, this is a great stone. And remember, it's picture that stone that was rowed away. Who's going to raise the stone? Remember, an angel rowed it away. And notice how they say they will roll the stone from the mouth's mouth. More than one man. But Jacob does it by himself. Now, either he's really strong all the time, or he's like Samson, the Spirit of God came upon him. They were not expecting him to be able to do this. And he wires this flock. And again, this picture, that flock, he's sent to find a wife. He's from Laban's brother. He's found a potential one. This is his household now. Everything begins he's he's the household of God. And it begins in the household of God and spreads outward from there. Begins with Israel, it spreads outward. The 12 apostles spreads outward. So the watering begins with the family of Israel. And he instilling this water, by the way. Rachel's father's obviously been dealing with this guy for a long time. Perhaps he even owns the well. Or if he doesn't own the well, he's got some arrangement and pays this guy, let's say monthly or whatever the case is. He's not stealing the water here. If you're thinking, if the thoughts crossed your mind, he's just taking care of the family of Israel. That's what his name's going to be later first, and then the rest will be taken care of at the right time. Now we get, again, the 12 apostles were from the family of Israel. It's a picture there, okay? Now we continue on. In Genesis 29, verse 11 through 15. And Jacob kissed Rachel, lifted up his voice and wept. And he told Rachel that he was her father's brother. He was Rebekah's son. And she ran and told her father. And it came to pass when Laban heard the tidings of Jacob, his sister's son, he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. And he told Laban these things. He said, surely you are my bone and my flesh. And he abode with him a space of a month. And Laban said to Jacob, because you are my brother, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be? Okay, this really tells us a lot about here. Notice for the family relationship right away, okay? And she tells her father. And notice, family and my flesh and bone. And notice when he bowled there with a month, he wasn't lounging around. He's been serving him. Jacob, remember, grew up in the tents. He was a plain man. He hung to the tents. So he's been out there working. Of course, who's he working with is Rachel. Perhaps that's why, Rachel, that's why he's, perhaps out there. But he's learning how to take care of the flocks. He's not hanging around the tents anymore. Mama's not the only woman in this boy's life anymore. He's out there learning from Rachel how to do the job her father taught him so he can do that job. And he's just not lazy at all. But a man who works ought to be paid. And Laban recognizes that. So he asks him what he wants, and now we're going to look at Jacob's response. And Jacob had two daughters. The name of one was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. And Leah was tender-eyed, but Rachel was beautiful and well-favored. And Jacob loved Rachel and said, I will serve you 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. He says, better I give her to you than I should give her to another man. Abide with me. And Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seen him a few days, for he had for the love he had for her. Okay, so he has two daughters. One's Leah. Now, tender-eyed, that's a little, we don't, perhaps use that expression. But one thing, perhaps in case our eyesight was a little weak, but more than that, some people, eye color to me is at least creepy. And, her eyes were not beautiful to look into. Were not particularly beautiful eyes. And, she was pretty much a not a particularly beautiful woman at all. In this contrast with Rachel. Now, why is this beautiful and well-favored? Is beautiful speaks perhaps, primarily over perhaps her skin, their face, and those kind of things. But well-favored speaks about her body shape being proportioned, in a way that was. There's no actual one way that suits all men, but there's some standards. The standard hourglass configuration of 3-2-3 is kind of standard. And And anyway, she's well favored in that regard. And she's just more attractive than Leah. And that's all Jacob is looking on at this point is the surface. So he's willing to serve for 7 years for her. And Laban's ready to give it. He don't want to give her another man. Now, if you read the text here as is, and look at that alone, just why it's important to understand the context of things inside the context of the entire Bible and the entire in the passage they're in the book it's in, it would appear that Jacob waited 7 years to marry her. The 7 years seem like a full. He does wait. He does serve for 7 years, but he marries her right away, and we'll show this. We'll prove it. By the end of this lesson, it will be obvious he married her right away. But the fact it was 7 years seemed like no big deal to him. I mean, he is hot for this girl. Now, we continue on in Genesis 29, verses 21, Genesis 29, verses 21 through 25. And Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife, my days fulfilled, I may go in unto her." Laban gathered all the men of the place and made a feast. And it came to pass that he took Leah his daughter and brought her to him, and he went in unto her. Laban gave to his daughter Leah Zilpah his maid for a handmaid. And it came to pass in the morning, behold, it was Leah. He said to Laban, "What have you done to me? Did I not serve you for Rachel? Wherefore have you beguiled me?" Okay, the paybacks are continuing here. First of all, I'll explain this here, though. My days fulfilled, they may go into her. Now, again, on the surface, if you're not aware of the customs and everything, it looks like the days of his 7 years fulfilled. Now he wants to go into her. But you're going to see that's not the case. It'll be, again, by the time I get to the end of this, it'll be evident without beyond a shadow of a doubt that they married her very quickly after they made this deal. His days fulfilled were the days preparing a place for where she could be, that he may be there also. Just as Messiah said, "I go to prepare a place for you, that where I am, you may be there also." And now the custom was pretty much everyone had their own tent, kind of their own, like having their own room. And a man would go in with his wife's tent. So the Bible will say that figuratively of him coming into her body, the tent. Figuratively, literally, he'd go into her tent. Okay. So he had to prepare her a nice tent and whatever, and find out what she liked and make this tent and whatever else he had to do to prepare, gather stuff for her and whatever, and this part, Laban probably supplied those things as part of the agreement. All right. And Jacob still may have, we actually know later we'll find out he didn't have any money left by this point, but made this agreement as part of the agreement, but it took time. And that's what it's talking about. He prepared a place for her that so where she was, he could be with her, he could be with him also. He's in Laban's camp, but he's got some little area over there separate himself and got her tent. Now she had a tent growing up, but now it's time for a bigger tent because she's going to have children, etc. And a very nice, in a nicer tent. And that's what it's referring to right here. So now he's made a feast, and this is where the paybacks begin. A feast speaks of food and drink. Remember, he just didn't trick his father with the fake venison. They also made him drink wine. And it's dark, and he can't see. In this tent, it's dark. And remember, his father couldn't see. And his judgment is impaired, just like impaired his father's judgment. And so Laban brought in Leah. And remember, she's all covered also before she goes in there. That was the custom, like a wedding bridal vow. And he brings her in there. She's all veiled and everything. And so his paybacks are terrible. He his father gave a blessing to him that he meant to give to Esau. Now he's being given, now a bride's be given to him, not the bride he wanted, but the one that Laban wanted to give him. So just it took the blessing his father intended for Esau. Now he's getting the bride, not the one, the bride his father-in-law intends, instead of the one he paid for. That's why he's beguiled. Laban has his own reason for beguiling. We will see, but God says, do not. The Bible says, do not be mocked. God is not mocked. Do not be deceived. You'll reap what you sow. And he is reaping what he sowed. As he treated his father and his brother, so is he being treated. He's being beguiled here. Now, here's why Laban does this, and we're looking to see how this plays out. And Laban said, it must not be so done in our country, to give the younger before the firstborn. Fulfill her week, and we'll give you this also to serve. You shall serve me yet another 7 years. Another 7 years. And Jacob did so, fulfill their week, and he gave him Rachel, his daughter to wife also. And he gave to Rachel his daughter Bilhah, her handmaid, to be her maid. He went into Rachel and loved Rachel more than Leah, and served with him yet 7 other years. Okay, there's one thing I want to draw. Well, we'll get to that. I'll draw your attention in a minute here. But so first of all, why did he do this? Because they had a custom. He couldn't marry the younger till the older was married. And if you ever watched Fiddler on the Roof, that custom is still done by Jewish people many years later, and other cultures as well. Okay, so no one has sought after Leah, so that's been a roadblock. That's what he's done. So okay, you've done this, but really he just won't. But really, also Laban wants Jacob to serve him 7 more. Wants 14 years out of him, which he's going to get. Now this week here, for filler week, remember that wedding Canaan, these wedding feasts went a week long. So now he's gonna have to go and be with Leah for this whole week. And after that, he gave him his daughter. And notice there's no mention of a feast for Rachel, just here, okay, just here, and there's no place for him preparing. So either Rachel had to come over and bring her own tent, or she and her sister lived in a tent together. And when it was their turn, when it was their night, they had to come over to Jacob's tent until Jacob could build Rachel a suitable tent. So Leah ended up with a beautiful tent that Jacob had built, with Rachel in mind. Just something to think about there. Now there's what. So notice Jacob took the deal and serves him in the other 7 years. So it doesn't mean there's 14 years gone by or 7 years. We'll prove this. And then, then he goes into, because he obviously went into Rachel first, then served him 7 years. So it's not like he served 7, then after the 7 years he went through there. It can appear that way in the text. If you consider this past, but we'll prove that's not the case here by the end. Now, one more thing I want you to notice here is this a little difference here in the wedding gift. He gave to Leah what? Zilpah, his maid, for a handmaid. A handmaid, someone's going to stay with you right there. And notice it was his maid. The maid would take care of things on his behalf, clean or whatever, wasn't necessarily with him all the time. Now his handmaid had been with him, and now that's Rachel's maid. So why? Because Leah tends to have been staying in the camp and needed someone to be with her, follow her around and do whatever, and help her out with things. But remember, Rachel's been out there with the sheep. She doesn't need a handmaid out there. Instead, someone to take care of her business in the camp, take care of things in the camp for her as well. And he's doing this looking ahead of time for them having children, to have help with taking care of the children. And these 2 women are probably not, they're probably not 20 years old like Rachel and Leah's older than that, whatever Leah's age is. So he's taken these two wives. He wanted one, he's got two. Paybacks are terrible, and they've begun, but they are by no means finished for this man. You'll payback. They're coming. There's more to come for him. Now, in Genesis 29, verse 31 through 35, read the following. And when the Lord saw that Leah was hated, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. And Leah conceived and bare a son, and she called his name Reuben. For she said, surely the Lord has looked upon my affliction. Now, therefore, my husband will love me. And she conceived again and bare a son, and said, because the Lord has heard that I was hated, he has therefore given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon. She conceived again and bare a son. And so now this time my husband will join to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore his name is called Levi. She conceived again and bare a son. So now I'll have praise of the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah, and left bearing. Okay. Now, some outstanding things here we need to note. Right? Note that Leah was hated. He loved Rachel, but again, it doesn't mean he hated Rachel. It means he preferred Leah. Okay, that's just a Hebrewism. Yeshua said you have to love him and hate your parents. But he didn't mean hate your parents. He means prefer him over the parents. Okay, so there's this animosity between her and her sister. They're in a competition for Jacob's affections. And notice Jacob is obviously fulfilling his marital duty to her. Okay, and she is conceiving. And notice it starts, the Lord saw she's hated. She has been called out to the Lord. She gives the Lord credit. The Lord has looked upon my affliction. The Lord has heard her complaint. Now she thinks, well, the Lord's been answering. Now he'll join to me. His heart will be knitted to mine. Not physically joined. That's obviously been occurring. And she gives praise to the Lord. And then she leaves off bearing. So Reuben had to be a year after, roughly, after she conceived. Then a period has to pass before she can resume, where she can conceive again. Say at least another year. So now 4 years have passed. Just keep that in mind. At minimum, 4 years have passed since they were married. But now let's look at Rachel and see how things are going with her. Because remember, Leah keeps having these children because he's after Jacob's affection. And so far, it's Leah 4, Rachel 0. Now, and that's where we begin in Genesis 30 and verses 1 through 6. When Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said to Jacob, give me children, or else I die. And Jacob's anger was kindling against Rachel, and he said, am I in God's stead, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb? And she said, behold, my maid Bilhah, going unto her, she shall bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her. And she gave him Bilhah, her handmaid to wife, and Jacob went in unto her. And Bilhah conceived and bare Jacob a son. And Rachel said, God has judged me, and has also heard my voice, and given me a son. Therefore call she his name Dan, or Dan. Okay, so, which means judge. Okay, so now first of all, let's take the beginning. She's barren, and she's envying her sister because she has children. And notice, give me children or else I die. Men sometimes have a hard time understanding how important this is to women. I mean, yes, we went over this and showed in Scripture that women were literally built for the pleasure of men, created for the pleasure of men. But they were meant to, the part of that is helping them. And the biggest thing to help them with is create a family, which requires giving children. And as a woman, in a movie I saw, a woman who many people in the world thinks very beautiful. In this movie, she was barren. And I think cancer had taken her had taken her uterus, and she said it made her feel like half a woman. Half of it was being beautiful and taken care of, but the other half was having children. I mean, really, that's what the womb's about. That's what it's part of the function of the breast is to feed the children, right? And Raquel, this is just every child that her sister has just makes it. It just makes it so much worse for her. But what does she do? Does she seek out God for this? She blames her husband. And remember, he prefers her. He's been doing everything he can to give her children. God's the one and he directs her to God. He's the one that's withheld. He's the one that closes the womb and opens it. Does she turn to God and start seeking him? No. She does what Sarah did and comes with her own plan. She does the same thing Sarah did. Now, Bilhah is 20 years old, or obviously 4 years have gone by. She's a teenager, perhaps, but now she's in that biblical age of adulthood, and she gives him to wife. And Jacob goes into her and conceives to have children for her on her. So now we got Team Rachel is ended up with 2 children. Ends up with as a child. Scores now 1-4. Well, let's see what happens after that. We continue on in Genesis 30, verses 7 through 13. And read the following. And Bilhah, Rachel's maid, conceived again and bare Jacob a second son. And Raquel said, with great wrestlings I've wrestled my sin and prevailed. She called his name Naphtali. And Leah saw, when Leah saw she had left bearing, she took Zilpah, her maid, and gave Jacob to wife. And Leah's maid bare Jacob a son. And Leah said, a troop comes. And she called his name Gad. And Leah's maid bare Jacob a second son. And Leah said, happy am I, for the daughters will call me blessed. And she called his name Asher. Okay, now notice again a change here. Raquel's maid now became her handmaiden. She has taken to being in the tent and staying in the camp. Leah has actually went the other direction. Her handmaiden previously is now the maid. And perhaps Leah's going out, going out, perhaps being near to Jacob, who's out taking care of the sheep, and being with her sons who are out there taking care of the sheep. Again, trying to, there's a fight for Jacob's affections, but now it's become a fight of who can outbreed who. So now team Raquel is 2, but Leah's 2 can play that game, and team Leah is now 6. Okay, team Raquel is still losing this. And as a troop comes, she says there's more on the way. And this is just going to irritate Rachel all the more. They'll call me blessed because she's got 6 kids that are recounted as hers. 6 kids she's going to help raise. And also notice her maids are probably helping her been raised this her kids as well. So Bilhah's and Raquel's obviously having Bilhah help her raise her. She's going to have him breastfeed on her behalf because she can't. Same thing here. Okay, so I'm going to call. So she's happy, but Raquel not so much. Now we're going to look at Raquel's next scheme here. Okay, Raquel's also coming with these plans, just like Sarai, her great aunt, did. And Reuben went into the days of the wheat field and found mandrakes. Oh, I'm sorry, Genesis 30, verse 14 through 16. Reuben went in the days of the wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. And Rachel said to Leah, give me, I pray you, of your son's mandrakes. She said unto her, is a small matter you've taken my husband? Would you also take away my son's mandrakes also? And Raquel said, therefore he shall lie with you tonight for your son's mandrakes. And Jacob came out of the field, and Leah went to meet him and said, you must come in unto me, for I have surely hired you with my son's mandrakes. And he lay with her that night. Okay, now you might be thinking, what on earth is this about? Why would she do this? Well, I'm going to explain that. First of all, notice the timing, the wheat harvest. Okay, remember the wheat harvest, you can't really start harvesting your wheat. You bring the first sheaf into Pentecost. And it got, so it goes, which starts early June, kind of mid-May to mid-June range. And then, and then you can, and it goes on for a few months. Well, so it's about July, into July, somewhere like that. Okay, so this is summertime we're talking about here, and these mandrakes are called that for one thing. Some of the roots sometimes look like a man, depending on the mandrake. They look like they just look like they kind of look like a man, like a stick-figure man. Some of them look like a stick-figure man with a little part of the root will come out. It looks a little bit like a man's begether, the thing he used to beget children. Some others look exactly like a man's begether. And for this reason, the idol worshippers around there had a superstition that mandrakes would give you fertility. That they were a gift from the gods of fertility, and the gods' fertility. They not just make you an aphrodisiac, perhaps make a man, make a man where he's more inclined to go into his wife and whatever, but also would make her more fertile. So Rachel wants the mandrakes so she can have children. Now, and she's willing to sell her night with Jacob to get them. Now, that's also something else. The husband has an obligation to give sex to his wife. Now, she cannot withhold when it's that night. It's her obligation as well. But she can, if he has more than one wife, sell it to another, which is exactly what he did. So Jacob, notice how Jacob went out to meet and informed him this. Went out to meet him, brought him into her tent, and he lay with her that night. So let's see the results of this mandrake exchange as we continue on here in Genesis 30, verse 17 through 21. And God hearkened to Leah, and she conceived, and Jacob bare the fifth son. And Leah said, God has given me my hire because I've given my maid to my husband. And she called his name Issachar. And Leah conceived again and bare Jacob the sixth son. And Leah said, God has endued me with a good dowry. Now will my husband dwell with me because I have borne him 6 sons. And she called his name Zebulun. Afterwards, she bare a daughter and called his name Dinah. Okay, now remember the order of the other children. 4 more sons were born. 4 more years have went by, minimum. Now, she has 3 more children. Now we're at 11 years minimum have went by. Now, that excludes the possibility that Jacob's only been married to them 7 years. You can't fit 11 years worth of events in a 7-year period. You can in a 14-year period. So that's first thing I want you to note. Now notice also how she's back to giving credit to God. There's no mention of God when she gave the handmaiden, but perhaps she was trusting God because she recognized God opens the womb, and she's the one that conceives. She isn't trusting in those mandrakes at all. Remember, she left off bearing. Hadn't born a child in 4 years minimum here. Okay. But she's trusted, and she has a fifth son, then a sixth, and the only daughter that we know that Jacob has, Dinah. Now she's certain a good dowry. She's got her children. She's got 6 children that she gave birth to the point of Zebulun, plus 2 of her handmaiden. If Jacob never loves her like he loves Rachel, she has this for compensation. And Jacob is going to be around her because she has the only daughter of Jacob. Jacob is going to be paying a lot more attention to her because of these children she's given him. So that's how this exchange went for Leah. But let's look how it went for Rachel. Well, it didn't, because these 3 years have passed by. But now, look, finally, a change of heart's going to occur in Rachel here. In Genesis 30, verse 22 through 24. And God remembered Rachel, and he hearkened to her and opened her womb. And she conceived and bare a son, and said, God has taken away my reproach. And she called his name Joseph, saying, the Lord shall add to me another son. Okay, notice, he hearkened to her. He listened to her. She started pleading with God. Blaming her husband didn't work. Having a child, using her maid to give children for her didn't really work. I mean, the score when that was done was team Rachel 2, team Leah 9. Okay, hasn't worked. Mandrakes didn't work. Her sister started having children again. The one who didn't eat the mandrakes. So much for their properties of fertility. She finally turned to God. She finally sought God, and that worked. And that's the way it is in your life. And this mandrakes thing was kind of like advice people get from watching Oprah or something. Okay. Someone's always trying to sell you some sort of remedy for something, natural remedy, and blah blah. You can cure cancer with cinnamon or whatever the case is. What you may have a problem in your life, but first of all, quit blaming other people for something only God can fix. Quit trying to find your own solution, and quit looking to whatever solution the world may offer you, and turn to God, and God will give you the desires of your heart. If you'll put your trust in him and walk according to his ways. And that's what Rachel did here. Notice God has taken away my reproach. And notice her faith. God's going to add me another son. Joseph means adding. God's going to add me another son. So now it's team Rachel 3, team Leah 9. Jacob has 12 children. But Leah is finally satisfied. Her reproach, and that reproach, what's that about? That's about women talking about her. Women being like, that's why she may already naturally feel kind of like half a woman, but women are mean to each other about these things. I discussed with my wife, there's just no other way to say it. They belittle her. Like, oh, what's wrong? You and Joseph not have and perhaps that's what drove her remarks about Jacob. I'm sorry. You and Jacob having marriage trouble? You and Jacob, you just aren't doing it for Jacob. Jacob, keeps having children by Leah, but look, women are just mean. Perhaps not, it wouldn't be just her sister. Perhaps they come, they're whispering behind her back, but she's always got that thought, this is what they're talking about. And flaunting, hey, look at our children. Where's yours? Kind of thing. I mean, and I got something for, and if you're If you're a believing woman, where you have children or not, you should not be doing this to other women. God's called you to build them up. You see that woman who desperately wants children and can't have them? You should be out there seeking to comfort her, not belittle her. But I'm sad to say, women in the church have do it all the time. Women in every congregation I've been in have had. If you get a congregation that's very large, you're going to find there's going to be a woman like that who's going to do that. If you've done this, I urge you, repent, because paybacks are terrible. It will come back on you in some manner. When they're mourning, you should be comforting them, not making their grief greater. And if you don't, the day is going to come when you're mourning and someone's going to say words to you that instead of comforting you, it's going to make your grief greater. If you've been doing that, stop it right now, repent, and turn around. So you're sowing good seed, you're going to reap a good harvest later. Okay, we're going to continue on here. We're going to continue on here in Genesis 30, verse 25 through 28. We're going to show that indeed Jacob took his wives right away. Because now 12 children, and remember there's there's at least a year between each one. 12 years have gone by at least. You can't fit that in a 7-year period. So and we're going to get that confirmed right here. And it came to pass when Rachel had borne Joseph that Jacob said to Laban, "Send me away that I may go into my own place, into my country. Give me my wives and children whom I have served you, and let me go. For you know my service which I have done you." And Laban said to him, "I pray you, if I found favor in your eyes, tarry, for I have learned by experience that the Lord God has blessed me for your sake." He said, "Appoint me your wages, and I'll give it to you." Okay, notice when Rachel had borne Joseph, "I've served you. The 14 years are over," he's saying. "I'm ready to go home." And he said, and he knows that, and he says, "You know, I've done a good job for you." And Laban agrees with this. And notice that and asked me, he doesn't want him to leave yet because God's been blessing Laban for his sake. Remember, I will bless those that bless you and curse those that curse you. And by the way, if you're a believer, that applies to you as well. You don't have to be a physical descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob for that to apply to. If you've been grafted into Israel through faith in the spiritual Israel, not the physical people of Israel. If you've gone that extra step and got circumcised and they're keeping all these customs, then you're grafted into physical Israel as well. You're part of the household. But if you are if you're the spiritual Israel, that applies to you too. But notice, Jacob worked hard for this man. Know my service. You know how hard I've worked for you. He didn't just lounge around. I'm the blessed of God. God blessed his work, and Jacob worked hard and gave God a lot to bless. And Laban knows this, and he doesn't want him to leave. And ask him what he wants instead. Now let's look at Jacob's response. In Genesis 30, verse 29 to 32, we read the following. He said to him, "You know how I've served you and how your cattle was with me. For as little that you had before I came, and is now increased to a multitude. And the Lord has blessed you since my coming. Now, when shall I provide for my own house also?" And he said, "What shall I give you?" And Jacob said, "Give me not anything, but if you will do this thing for me, I will feed again and keep your flock. I will pass through all your flock today. Remove from there the speckled and spotted cattle and the brown cattle from among the sheep, the spotted and speckled among the goats, and such shall be my hire." Now remember, again, the word cattle can mean cows, but in King James English can also mean livestock or just animals, okay? So, You can see again, reminds you, I've done a great job. That's obvious. I've increased them. But what's the problem? Jacob has 12 children now. He doesn't really have any means to take care of them. Sure, he might have some money or whatever when he leaves, but it's going to run out. And he needs his own livestock so he can take care of his family. So he agrees to take care of the family for his own livestock. And notice who he specifies. Why does it tell us they're speckled and spotted, brown and speckled and spotted? Because the animals with a solid color coat were more valued, particularly white. When you think of sheep, you mostly think of white sheep. But next to them, black sheep, believe it or not, were more valued than brown sheep. Okay. Because the black sheep, you can make black garments with it. You know how it is. People say black and white go with everything, right? Okay. The white can be dyed except for the brown. It's just kind of, brown. And yeah, it's great in the fall, but people aren't really see, and the spotted and speckled, again, those hides weren't as valuable. The hair from them wasn't as valuable to goats. Okay. And really, why are these? These are the ones the world did not value. And that's what Jacob wants. And he knows Laban's more likely to give it to him because Laban is worldly, as we'll see, and he values what the world values. But there's a picture of that. He's making a flock, his own flocks, his own herds. Believers are primarily made out of those who the world has not valued. Not many, I'm paraphrasing here the words of Paul, of the rich and famous are going to come to faith. It's the despised of the world, in the words of Paul. Those the world does not value is whom the Messiah is making most of his flock from. It's a picture there. And so notice, I will keep and feed your flock. Okay. God is taking care of the whole world for the sake of believers. Just as Jacob is going to take care of the flock that's not his for the sake of the flock that is his. Now we're going to jump forward, and we'll go in more detail with this when we get there. But to show that again that Jacob is taking his wives right away, and he just after he prepared a place and had the 2 weeks, and he took these wives right away, and it's very evident here in Genesis 31 verse 41. For thus I've been 20 years in your house. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters. And 6 years for your cattle, and you have changed my wages 10 times. And we'll get into some more of this stuff later, but 20 years, but that was the 14 years for your 2 daughters. And when those 14 years end, when Joseph was born, when they began, right after he fled from Laban, okay? So it's been 14 years. Joseph is born 14 years after, because remember, that's when after Joseph born, when he's going to leave. He's going to leave after he took the 2 daughters. He couldn't have saddled these kids, served them 14 years, and then had them. Couldn't even done it in 7, as we showed. And he's going to say 6 more years for the cattle. And again, we'll talk about that part in our next lesson. We get back next time we get back to the patriarchs. But now we're going to look at this. Now we're going to get his age very well narrowed down here. Okay. So Joseph's 14 years after he left. Now let's continue on. In Genesis 41, 46 to 47, read the following. And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out of the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. And there were 7 and in the 7 plenteous years, the earth brought forth fruit by handfuls. Okay, Joseph was 14 at the end of that 14 years. We just read this. Okay, now he's 30. That makes 44 years. Then the 7th plenteous years come on. That makes 51 years. 51 years have gone by. Okay. Since he left, since Joseph left, Jacob left to go left to go to Laban. Since he's 51 years since he deceived his father. Okay. I went by at this point. Let's continue on. In Genesis 45, verse 6, we read the following. In these 2 years, the famine has been in the land, and there are yet 5 years. Should be near earing nor harvest. Okay, the 7 years are over, and now 2 years of famine have started. 2 of the 7 years of famine started. 2 and 51 makes 39. Makes 53. It also makes Joseph 39 years old. 30 plus 7 plus 2. 39 and 14 is 53. So 53 years have went by. This is when Joseph's talking to his brothers and revealed himself to his brothers, who are then now they had to go fetch Jacob, and Jacob comes before him and talks to Pharaoh. And notice what he says here. 40 in Genesis 47, verse 9. And Jacob said to Pharaoh, the days of my pilgrimage are 130 years. Few and evil have been the years of the days of my life then. Have not attained the years of my fathers in the days of their pilgrimage. Okay. Our life down here is a pilgrimage. But he's 130 at this point. 130 at 53 years after he left. 53 years after he deceived his father. Subtract that, you get 77 years old. Him and Esau were 77 years old. After his brother got married, he hung out there 37 years not getting married. And I bring this up because often, like in the children's Bible I read to my kids when they were growing up and stuff, you see a picture of him deceiving his father, and he looks like he's a teenager, maybe early 20s. Now, given that people are living twice as long here, roughly, a little longer than a day, he still should look like he's saying his mid 40s, okay, or his 40s. He's one of these guys who just didn't want to, again, just like his father and this big mama's boy, he didn't have room for 2 women in his life. He didn't have room for his mama and somebody else. Only after he got away from his mama and began missing her, he got married. But he was 77 years old. Okay, so I hope you can see this, that he did take his wives right away. Bear it out in the text. Bear it out in the text. When you consider the whole context, and you also, him and Esau were 77 years old when they deceived their father, making Isaac 137 years of age when that occurred. That's all I have for this week. Until next week, shalom.